Welcome everybody to this Mary Bosanquet lecture. And I'm going to hand over to Barbara. She's going to tell us something about the background of it.
I've asked for the privilege of speaking about Mary Bosanquet because she is an absolute hero of mine. Mary Bosanquet was the daughter of a refugee family in London. They were Huguenots, they were prosperous refugees. And in the time of Jane Austen, she could not face a life of balls and all that sort of thing. And her family kind of lost patience with her, though they loved her dearly. She had a maid, a young woman in the household, who'd found Methodism and who told her about the Methodist way of thinking about God and faith. And she was enthused by it. She found out about John Wesley. She got in with the Wesleys. She got in with all those other women called Sarah. And she left the family. She had some independent money. She set up a children's home. She equipped women to go out and be able to work and have their own careers. And she tried to preach. When I say tried, I don't mean she wasn't very good at it. She preached apparently on one occasion to 10,000 people at a time. But Wesley, of course, said that this was not permissible because she was a woman. And one of the reasons why it's important we remember Mary Bosanquet is because the place where she lived and did this stuff, Wesley did say to her at one point, "Why don't you come and live with my mother in London?" And she said, "No, thank you." I have some sympathy with that kind of view as well. The place where she did this was here in Telford. It was along the road. And if you go to the parish church there, you can apparently find her grave. But in the church, you can see the step, which is where she was allowed to stand because she wasn't allowed in the pulpit. So she preached from a step, and there's a plaque. Mary Bosanquet preached here. She was one of those women who gave Wesley that understanding of the quadrilateral, that our experience of the Spirit, not just what we've read in the Bible or what tradition teaches us, but then what we see God doing, that has to move us as well. And one of the delightful things about Mary Bosanquet, though rather sad, is that when she was a young woman, she met a leading vicar, wowed by the Methodist movement, and theologian called John Fletcher. John Fletcher was also an emigre. He was Swiss. And they kind of, but she was posh and rich, and he wasn't. 25 years later, he said something along the lines of, "I've always liked you." And she said something along the lines of, "I've always liked you too." And they got married. So we should kind of call her Mary Bosanquet Fletcher or Mary Fletcher. But for most of her life, she was this independent woman, Mary Bosanquet, because sadly, they'd been married 4 years and John Fletcher died. We have a Methodist school, John Fletcher of Madeley. I don't think we have Mary Bosanquet of Madeley because I don't think the kids can spell it. And my last delightful thing is that I asked Tim McQuibben, Methodist historian extraordinaire, why do we call her Mary Bosanquet and not Mary Bosanquet, like the newsreader? And he said, well, I knew somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody who knew Mary Bosanquet, and this is how she said it. So in honour of Methodist women through the ages, and under the name of Mary Bosanquet, I am delighted to welcome you to this evening's Mary Bosanquet lecture.
Before I invite Maggie to welcome our speaker, we have other guests here who have come from a distance from other countries. I was delighted to meet them on Tuesday at the Global Relations meeting. So, Rebecca, can you come and introduce our wonderful guests?
Good evening. My name is Rebecca Boardman, and I'm the Deputy Director for Global Relationships in the Connectional team. It's an absolute delight to be here at this MWIB gathering this evening. And as a team, we are incredibly grateful for the way in which this community of women is such a vital part of our global relationships as the Methodist Church in Britain. Particularly thankful for the Easter offering and the incredible ways in which you resource our church to pray and think and give and be global neighbours. So in part of that relationship and the partnership that we have together, it's a joy to be here this evening. And we're joined by the women who have joined the delegations from our global partners overseas as part of conference. So as our commitment to being a global church, we have representatives here with us throughout this week. So might I I appreciate there's a microphone, so might I invite our global participants to stand up and just share your name and the church that you're from. And might I invite the rest of the room in the conversations later to speak to inspirational women about the work that they're doing in their own churches. You might need to use the microphone, I'm sorry. As a handheld. Oh, sorry.
Hello, I'm Marta. I'm a pastor in Barcelona, and I am from the Spanish Evangelical Church.
Good evening. I'm Sumita Veerasinghe, spouse of Reverend Kingsley Veerasinghe, President of Methodist Church Sri Lanka, representing all the Methodist spouses. Thank you.
Hello and good evening. I'm Susanna Latu, representative from the Methodist Church, Tonga, the Kingdom of Tonga. I am very glad to be here and join the Methodist Church in Britain. Thank you so much.
My name is Hope Morgan Ward. I live in Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm the ecumenical officer for the Council of Bishops of the United Methodist Church, and it's a delight to be with you.
So thank you so much.
Well, good evening. I have one little notice before introducing our speaker tonight. Despite the very best efforts of the bookshop, the books that Kathy has written that were ordered for tonight, something went terribly wrong and they're on their way back to Scotland, having got as far as Wolverhampton. So if you want any of Kathy's books, you can order them at the bookstall and they will be ordered for you. But unfortunately, as I say, despite everybody's best efforts, they haven't arrived here. So I'm very pleased to be able to introduce our speaker tonight. She has been called given all kinds of interesting titles. A minister, a feminist, a campaigner for social justice, an eco-champion, a writer, a poet, a theologian, and a humanitarian. I'm sure there are other things that could be added to that, but we didn't want to be here all night. We actually wanted to hear Kathy and not me. But I first became aware of Kathy's writing when I was training to be a local preacher. And one of my support group gave me a copy of a book called Love Burning Deep, this one here. Still got it. It's very moth-eaten around the edges, but I've still got it. And she said to me, hang on to this book. It's full of treasure. And she was absolutely right. It's been my go-to book for quite some time. So it gives me particular pleasure to welcome Kathy here tonight and to hear what she has to share with us. Kathy Galloway.
In a featureless hall somewhere in the middle of England, 200 women, not young, in their 50s and 60s mostly, gather and connect. They fill every space with the hum of conversation, with news of projects, programs, plans for preserving the earth, or at least their little bit of it, and with green things, plants, ferns, flowers, and stones and little pools of water. These are women who garden. They invest in a future they will not see. I am astonished. In 1999, I was invited by what was then the Methodist Women's Network to speak at their annual meeting on the spirituality of the Beatitudes. I enjoyed my visit so much that I wrote a poem about it, part of which you've just heard. That experience and that poem came back to me when I received the invitation to give this year's Mary Bosanquet lecture, which I was very honoured to accept. I must confess that I had never heard of Mary and her remarkable life, and it's been good to learn more about her impact on Methodism, and especially about the door she opened for the Methodist women who followed her. But I have met and been inspired by many Methodist women, including women preachers, and something about those I know, and that poem from 1999 brought another very short poem to mind. It's by the much-loved American poet Mary Oliver. Instructions for living a life. Pay attention. Be astonished. Tell about it. It seemed to suggest a great title for my lecture because in a way it's a description of the preacher's task or the poet's task. And for me, a lifelong preacher, but also a poet, I find less and less difference between the two. Poetry has many attractions for people, but for me, the reason I love it more than any other kind of writing is because I feel it through my feet, because it is rhythmic. I feel it in my body, and because it starts in my feet, it connects me to the earth. Almighty God, Creator, the morning is yours, rising into fullness. The summer is yours, dipping into autumn. Eternity is yours, dipping into time. The vibrant grasses, the scent of flowers, the lichen on the rocks, the tang of seaweed, all are yours. Gladly we live in this garden of your creation. In the late Middle Ages, the poets and singers of Scotland were known as makers. It's not too fanciful to imagine the universe as the song of God the Maker, a joyous outpouring of energy and creativity and wild ordering and continuous exchange. And it is truly a religious instinct to respond to God's song-making with our antiphon of praise. The earth makes worshippers of us. The makers paid attention, were astonished, told about it. We know that before they ever have language, babies perceive the world through their senses, bombarded with sensory messages in every moment of every day. As language and relationship with the people in their environment develops, some of that early sensory awareness is dulled. But the sense of place, that's a significant factor in our interpretation of the world has its roots in some of our first experiences. It lays foundation for our relationship with our location, whether we will like it or not, whether it nurtures us or not, whether we have a feeling of belonging in it or one of alienation. A sense of place is one of the most profound human experiences. For many people, it's stronger than their attachment to other human beings. It's part of what motivates patriotism, nationalism, artistic expression, religious devotion, ecological concern, and personal and political identity. But today, in our relationship with our own habitat, the sociological and historical pressures running against connectedness are acute. Being a species among species means recognizing our connections, but it also means recognizing our finiteness, our contingency, our limits. But all too often, we systematically demean, degrade, armor, and hurt bodies. We pay lip service to community, but we live out of individualism. Jonathan Porritt, former director of Friends of the Earth, searching for the reasons people don't take ecological issues seriously enough, said, "Simply not enough people are dying yet in our countries of skin cancer, of UV rays, or from pollution toxification illnesses. Nor are enough coastal communities drowning yet from rising sea levels due to global warming. The visible, tangible, avoidable consequences of eco-disaster are not yet powerful enough to persuade sufficient people to change today's priorities." Is this what we are heading for in the West? Is our denial of reality so great, our denial of our finitude and the planet's finitude so strong, that having rolled back our boundaries so firmly over other people and species, having externalized our costs to such a degree, we have lost the ability to self-limit and must wait for the limitations laid upon us by catastrophe and tragedy. So much of our relationship with our habitat today is mediated. We're a very long way indeed from the book of Job, whose writer draws continual attention to our embeddedness in the natural world in his story. He asks, can papyrus grow where there is no marsh? Can reeds flourish where there is no water? While yet in flower and not cut down, they wither before any other plant. And he says, ask the animals, and they will teach you. The birds of the air, and they will tell you. Ask the plants of the earth, and they will teach you. And the fish of the sea will declare to you. Who among all these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this? In his hand is the life of every human thing and the breath of every human being. Job was called to let God be God. Even with all our scientific understanding, what we know about the universe is so much less than what is mysterious to us still. The universe, in all its complexity and beauty, moved a quantum physicist to say that the appropriate response to it is one of sheer wonder and love. But such a celebration requires the dethronement of human ego and cooperation with nature, rather than domination over it. In the close and patient observation of creatures in the wild, human beings discover the nature of them, their particularities, their strengths, the ways in which our creatureliness is similar and yet different. It's in the nature of human beings to be in dialogue, to ask a question, to start a conversation, to yearn for communication. The book of Job is a dialogue between Job and his creator, and it has huge power still to move us. I think of David Attenborough as being something like a present-day Job, continuing that great dialogue of life, because it challenges a particular kind of pious orthodoxy, the easy linkage of virtue and prosperity, and the equally shallow linkage of sin and suffering, both of which still disfigure the church today. This dialogue, on the other hand, speaks to us of real life. That the dialogue continues still, despairing and yet hopeful, is a gift and a cause for celebration. It is the dialogue of life. And what is our dialogue? Of course, this is a huge question and challenge. For the fantasy of transcendence, of escape from connection with other lives, we are torching our life support systems, as George Monbiot puts it. When I was preparing this lecture, I read something that he had written. Traveling by kayak, I cover less sea and must stay closer to the coast than the people racing past in power boats. But I have an intimacy of connection with the places and living systems that surround me, with the sounds of nature, with signs too subtle to see at speed. Sand eels stippling the surface, the dorsal fins of bass pursuing them, holographic sea gooseberries suspended in the water column, cowries eating star ascidians on the rocks exposed at low water, of which the powerboats are likely to be deprived. For me, living in the middle of a city as I do, my connection with my habitat, my place, is greatly enabled by paying close attention, by observing and listening and using all my senses in an intentional way. In the mid-20th century, Presbyterian Scotland, into which I was born, its rituals and ceremonies, its sensory austerity and bareness, its extreme concentration on words and abstract concepts, seemed designed to remind people that the flesh was wicked, the body not to be trusted, and that everything sensory was damnable papist idolatry. This, I think, has done incalculable damage to generations, and in the end, also to the church. As the Orcadian poet Edwin Muir wrote, "How could our race betray the image and the incarnate one unmake, who chose this form and fashion for our sake? The word made flesh is here made word again, a word made word in flourish and arrogant crook. See there King Calvin with his iron pen, and God 3 angry letters in a book. And there the logical hook on which the mystery is impaled and bent into an ideological argument." Today, we know that trauma is held in the body, with consequences for both physical and mental health, often lifelong. Some of you may remember the scandal of Romanian orphanages towards the end of the Ceausescu regime and the end of communism. Hundreds of thousands of children were abandoned and kept in orphanages in the most appalling conditions, where they were subjected to institutionalized neglect, physical and sexual abuse, and drug use to control behavior. Apart from all the other long-term effects of this dehumanizing treatment, one of the most interesting discoveries was how important basic human contact, simple holding and cuddling, was to the mental development of babies and small children. This sensory lack has a physical effect on the brain, and traumatized children can grow up to actually have smaller brains. Reading the literature on trauma, and especially trauma in children, is terrifying. All Christians, all people of goodwill, if they are to respond and act with care, pastoral sensitivity, hope-filled action, must reject any ideologies, theologies, and practices which see the body in all its varieties as a problem to be solved, an inconvenience to be legislated away, a curse to be broken, or a threat to be controlled. But it's not just for those who suffer trauma that our ownership of our embodiment is so crucial. It's in order that our capacity for love, joy, delight, beauty, and courage may be enabled and enhanced. It's for the sake of justice, and that we may live fully alive, that we need to recognize the gift of our bodies, that we need to come to our senses. I guess many of you, like me, watched at least some of the Olympic Games last year. Some of you do that? I've always loved athletics, an interest probably born of having a brother who was a national athlete. So every 4 years, I am delighted and inspired by those who run, jump, throw, in an attempt to go faster, higher, and stronger than their fellows, and than their own personal bests, individually or as part of a team. But I also enjoyed seeing some of the sports I don't normally follow, and some I didn't even know existed. Competition bouldering, anyone? I'm full of admiration for the years of dedicated training and discipline involved in all of the sports. And with a great stretch of the imagination, I can see that just possibly, when I was young, I could have learned to do most of them to at least a beginner level. They seem within the possibility of my human body. And there are a few I just cannot comprehend. Watching Simone Biles turn multiple somersets from a standing start, or Mondo Duplantis propel himself over a bar more than 6 meters high with only a slender, bendy pole for support, seems almost superhuman to me. All of the Olympic sports demonstrate for me the potential of the amazing thing that is the human body. And as much, or even maybe more so, the Paralympics confirm this potential. It is not only those blessed with physical perfection who can achieve extraordinary things. People who the world has described often dismissively as disabled demonstrate conclusively that given appropriate support, structure, and opportunities, they can develop different but equally impressive abilities to the highest degree. But it's not just sport. I remember watching a proms concert a couple of years ago on television that I found just riveting. It was a recording of the Scottish violinist who is now the director of the Edinburgh International Festival, Nicola Benedetti, performing Wynton Marsali's violin concerto in D. It was a magnificent performance of a great new work. I don't know if any of you saw it. Nicola was wearing a stunning white catsuit. And what really struck me was the huge physical effort in playing music You could see the muscles rippling all through her body into her arms. It was a different kind of physical potential being realized. In thinking about great music and great sport, I am, of course, talking about elite music and elite sport. The majority of the world's population and many countries simply do not have the resources or often the freedom to offer that level of opportunity, the facilities, the equipment, the training, the diet, to people who may equally have the talent, but which will remain untapped. It's no surprise that the countries in the top 10 medal table at the Olympics are all high-income countries, although they're very different in other regards. Most of us, I imagine, don't feel anything other than enjoyment of and appreciation for the dedication of elite sports people and musicians, except possibly for a vague regret that we didn't practice harder as children when we had the chance, and a gratitude that we can still participate at our own level. Our lives and our bodies offer us many other opportunities of fulfillment, but the catastrophic global injustice and inequality of the world is not so kind to everyone. I'm an adopted grandmother for a young Vietnamese couple living and studying in Glasgow. 2 years ago, they had their first longed-for baby. He was born by IVF, something that would not have been available to them in Vietnam. The birth was fine, but Edwin then had great difficulty in taking to breastfeeding. For 6 weeks, which is an extraordinarily long time, his anxious and stressed new mother expressed her breast milk to feed him. The midwives in Glasgow had never met anyone who persisted so long, but they got there in the end. They did this by following very ancient wisdom. They lay together in the bed, both completely naked, and eventually, skin to skin, Edwin found his way and his instinct and latched onto the nipple. It was a vivid reminder to me that, first of all, we are animals, and this is one place where following animal instincts has huge benefits for health. And I just want to say that today is Edwin's 2nd birthday, and today also his dad is graduating with his PhD at Glasgow University. So I just want to, put that out there and congratulate. But though we are all born, from our moment of birth, children experience the world in very different ways. Perhaps that's because there's so much of it, so many people being born, living, dying, in their billions now across the world. So many species, animals, plants, so much often inconvenient life, people getting in the way of other people's ambitions, greed, beliefs, people who are not useful. Our world and its dominant economic system sets value according to market forces, and they tend to value what's scarce or exotic, has a high utility value. So much of life just seems too common to be worth much, and the world too often goes along with that. Almighty God, Redeemer, the sap of life in our bone and being is yours, lifting us to ecstasy. But in the garden that is each of us, always the thorn. It is another aspect, I think, of our failure to accept that we are a species among species, that nature, including human nature, does not consist of the simplistic binaries that are wielded as a weapon in the culture wars. and that however devotedly people believe them, actually function as a means of social control. The natural world is so much more complex, everywhere marked by differentiation, and the human species is the same. There are, for example, many millions of intersex people across the world. Are we supposed to say to them, sorry, God made a mistake with you, you're not a proper human being? We're only just beginning to get past saying this to people who are born deaf or blind. Sorry, God made a mistake. In the parable of the Good Samaritan in Luke's Gospel, Jesus does two things. He sets human relationships within the context of this great commandment to love our neighbours as we love ourselves. And he refuses to place limits on the definition of who a neighbour is. He does not say our neighbour is everyone except those of a different nationality or ethnicity. He does not say our neighbour is everyone except those of a different religion. He does not say our neighbour is everyone except those of a different gender or sexual orientation. He does not say our neighbour is everyone except people in small boats. He tells a story which is characterized by inclusion, and he makes behavior, not belief, the final criterion of neighborliness, specifically the practice of kindness. My understanding of our faith is that we will be judged not by what we believe, but by how we love. I think this is the message of Jesus, the living word. He scapegoated no one, though he was scapegoated himself. When you pay close attention, Jesus is astonishing and to be told about. He told lots of stories about people's bodies. The bodies of grown-ups come with stretch marks and scars, faces that have been lived in, relaxed breasts and bellies, backs that give trouble, and well-worn feet, flesh that is particular and obviously mortal. They also come with bruises in their heart, wounds they can't forget, and each of them a company of lovers in their soul who will not return and cannot be erased. And yet I think there is a flood of beauty beyond the smoothness of youth. And my heart aches for that grace of longing that flows through bodies no longer straining to be innocent, but yearning for redemption. I love this poem by Janet Morley. Of course, it speaks to my age and stage in life, but it's also a cogent reminder that however fascinating or terrifying our sexuality is, our daily bodily experience is mostly much more mundane. And we are more affected by other realities, feeling too cold, or, unless you are a Scot, too hot. The acute pain of toothache, or the chronic pain of sciatica, the noisy neighbours, or the exhaustion of over-busy schedules. In dealing with these realities, we look towards a wider range of relationships and intimacies. In our heart of hearts, we know that there is often something lacking in the terms by which we negotiate the meetings of our needs. It's often hard for us to accept our own deepest humanity, hard to affirm intimacy. But the struggles and joys of the parent-child relationship, the patient attentiveness of the carer, the mutual affection of friends, the deep bonds of brotherly and sisterly love, the companionship of many kinds of community and family life, and the mutual acceptance and respect for our frailties are also to be cherished. Give us a God with skin, not the forgotten God of some empty ritual, nor a vague kind of inferred presence. We don't want that indifferent greybeard, nor the frigid bookkeeper, nor capricious wonder worker. We don't want a human choice from a pantheon of all our own fears and foibles, our hopes and heroics. Do not try to palm us off with a warm fuzzy, nor to confuse us with some clever theological construct. We need a God with skin. It's hard for us in the UK to really understand the deep trauma that not just the Second World War, but much of the 20th century caused in Eastern Europe. From the Soviet famines of the 1930s, when an estimated 8 million peasant farmers died of starvation in Stalin's forced collectivization of agriculture, the majority of them being Ukrainian, a time known as the Holodomor, to the occupation of Poland and the Warsaw Ghetto, the Holocaust, to the Battle of Stalingrad with its 2 million casualties, and the siege of Leningrad when 1 million people died. In fact, the whole Eastern Front, where 30 million people lost their lives, we can barely comprehend or imagine the scale and the suffering, which is very largely overlooked in our narratives of World War II. So the Russian tanks rolling across the border into Ukraine, and the horror of what has happened there is unspeakable. And amid the many atrocities, one in particular I have found particularly distressing. It is that during this assault, and actually since 2014, Russia has forcibly transferred almost 20,000 Ukrainian children to areas under its control, assigned them Russian citizenship, forcibly adopted them into Russian families, and created obstacles to their reunification with their parents and homeland. The United Nations has stated that these deportations constitute war crimes. Not that we should need the UN to tell us that. The acute fear and distress being caused to these children is almost beyond imagining. Sadly, this kind of forced removal of children is not new, from their parents is not new. Neither has it ever worked out well in the many places it has been done. Usually in some kind of colonial white supremacist context, among indigenous communities in Canada and the USA, for the stolen generation in Australia, in Greenland among the Inuit, in Israel among the Yemeni community, in South Africa at the time of the juntas, and of course, we see this being reported day by day in the United States, where parents are being separated from their children every day. It's an acute reminder that of all the victims of war, children, the innocent ones, are also the most vulnerable. And just when you thought things for children couldn't get any worse, now there is Gaza in what is the most tragic of wars. Perhaps you remember the name Hind Rajab. Does anybody know that name? She was the 6-year-old Palestinian child who was trapped under fire in Gaza City last year, hiding inside her uncle's car, surrounded by the dead bodies of her relatives, her uncle, aunt, and 5 cousins. They had set off from their home earlier in the day, having been told by the Israeli army to evacuate to a supposedly safer area. But their vehicle was shelled by an Israeli tank, killing everyone in it except for Hind and her 15-year-old cousin Layan. Layan called the Palestinian Red Crescent Society for aid, crying that the tank was now right next to them. Diane was killed by machine gun fire while she was still on the phone to the dispatcher. When the Red Crescent team phoned back, it was Hind who answered, her voice almost inaudible, drowned in fear. It soon became clear that she was the only survivor in the car and that she was still in the line of fire. For 3 hours, Rana, the Red Crescent operator, stayed on the line with her while her team appealed to the Israeli army to allow their ambulance to access the location. The ambulance and paramedics set out to rescue this scared little girl. Days later, the bodies of Hind and the paramedics were found, all riddled with bullets. I cannot tell you how distressed I have been by that story. It pierced my soul so that during Holy Week, I could not hear the Good Friday narratives without being almost blinded by fury. How can we listen devotedly to an account of the 3-hour passion of a man 2,000 years ago while remaining indifferent at a global level to the 3-hour passion of a 6-year-old little girl? Did you not feel the soft baby skin pressed to your cheek? The small arms clinging around your neck like ivy on a post? The small weight asleep on your chest in the night, and know that this was the meaning of the incarnation? This sweet, damp flesh, these small bones, Christ child, human, the whole universe in her eye. A few nights listening to the breathing of a sleeping child could have answered a lot of your endlessly tortured questions about the doctrine of man. You might have adopted your breathing to the heartbeat of God lying beside you, and others might have killed less babies. War is hell, everywhere and at all times. We sacrifice our children and young people. We fetishize it as entertainment and a kind of marker of masculinity. And we create generation after generation of traumatized people. I cannot imagine what the long-term consequences of such brutal violence is doing to young Israeli soldiers and to young child soldiers across the world. The environmental damage caused by war and preparations for war is incalculable. I mean no disrespect to soldiers who are mostly just doing what they are ordered to by old men. The American Franciscan Richard Rohr writes, "Christianity is a lifestyle, a way of being in the world that is simple, non-violent, sharing, and loving. However, we made it into an established religion and all that goes with that, and avoided the lifestyle change itself. One could be warlike, greedy, racist, selfish, and vain in most of human history, and still believe that Jesus is one's personal Lord and Savior. The world has no time for such silliness anymore. The suffering on earth is too great." They held up a stone. I said, "Stone." Smiling, they said, "Stone." They showed me a tree. I said, "Tree." Smiling, they said, "Tree." They shed a man's blood. I said, "Blood." Smiling, they said, "Paint." They shed a man's blood. I said, "Blood." Smiling, they said, "Paint." And as a member of the Iona community, with an explicit commitment to peacemaking, I am well aware of the ambiguous nature of our Christian scriptures, our liturgies, our histories, our religious language, our theologies, our practices. Violence and exclusion are woven through them like scarlet threads, as they are through all of life. These threads, as much as the faith in which they are embedded, continue to shape our modern world and the dominant ideological maps in both church and state. There are times where I feel so enmeshed in the web of violence, so aware of its implications, so despairing of the Christian community as a model of non-violence and reconciliation that it seems impossible to break free. And I hear once again the question of Jesus to me, "Who do you say that I am?" I want to say a little about how God comes to me. Speaking personally, God has never come to me through a proposition, a theology, a doctrine, or a dogma. Hope and resurrection have quickened in me in the body and in the world. Deliverance, healing from harm, reconciliation have always and only been through the Word made flesh. Through my senses, in the infinite beauty of created things, in trees planted beside water, in silence and songs and psalms and poems and the testimony of others, in touch and tenderness, in companionship and food and rain and sun. God comes to me when I am swimming in the sea. Perhaps this is a preconscious memory of the womb, but I think God is a more stylish way of putting it. So I'm holding on to the Word made flesh and the revaluing of the body, and that includes our physical, natural interconnectedness. Build me a bridge over the stream to my neighbour's house, where he is standing in dungarees in the fresh morning. O ring of snowdrops, spread wherever you want, and you also, blackbirds, sing across the fences. My neighbour, if the rain falls on you, let it fall on me also, from the same black cloud that does not recognise gates. I remember once being at the nuclear base at Faslane with some of the saints for a peace demonstration, and something extraordinary happened, which my favourite and much loved Methodist preacher and poet Jan Such Pickard wrote a wonderful poem about. We shared communion at the gates of Faslane, one of the places in a broken world where breaking bread and drinking bitter wine is most relevant. We shared it to remember security, not of barbed wire and missiles, but of God's love that risks all and gives life. We shared in a warm circle of believers. But later, when we sat down on the cold road, we found that the bread and the cup had escaped and were still out there in the crowd, being shared carefully among people of all kinds, this paradox of pain and promise being passed from hand to hand in a broken world. Somehow, in a place of great violence, a different kind of space came into being. The Holy Spirit, unexpected, unpredictable, uncontrollable, came among us in the power of non-violence, as the Spirit does when we hold the space for her. So I hold on to the promise and the power and the peace of the Spirit. The memory of that which is intolerable to us is remembered in Christ's body, in which is named all the violence of the world. But our communion is not in the memory of suffering. Our communion is in the hope of transformation, of new life, of blessing and sharing and laughter and delight. Our communion is in the feast, even if the feast is outside the gates of a nuclear base. When I worked for Christian Aid, as we launched humanitarian fundraising appeals, drafted statements, petitioned governments, and sought to bring life-saving assistance to our global partners, this story increasingly seemed a powerful metaphor for the chaos threatening to overwhelm life in so many places. In the storm and the struggle, it seems as if we are going nowhere, battling against the elements, forces which seem too powerful to overcome. Not even just the might of arms or armies, but of despair, anguish, suffering and hatred. Still, it has seemed to me most important to keep faith with all those on the margins who are caught in a storm that is not just spiritual but material, not just personal but political. To act despite our fear, to persist in hope, to stand for justice, to pray for peace in the midst of such outrage and suffering is truly a call to walk on water. And in the midst of all our struggles is Jesus, the teacher from Galilee, saying, "Don't be afraid." Last year, I was at the opening concert of the Edinburgh Festival, whose theme was Rituals That Unite Us. Osvaldo Golijos' La Pasión según San Marcos is almost a quarter of a century old now. It was commissioned as one of 4 new passions in the year 2000 to mark the 250th anniversary of Bach's death. But its treatment of the gospel still came as a shock. A riot of rhythm and colour, interweaving a variety of Latin American musical styles and cultural and dance traditions. This was Christ's suffering, not as solemn biblical narrative, but as a here and now human crisis, one told, retold, and reenacted by the masses in language drawn from the Spanish vernacular gospel pamphlets sold on street corners. A St. Mark's Passion in which choristers gesticulated in anger, soloists swayed in rhythm, and Christ's crucifixion was conveyed through capoeira, would doubtless raise many eyebrows. But in Golijos' prismatic interpretation, and when delivered with such conviction, the intertwining of music and movement and ritual felt entirely and utterly natural. It was one of the most embodied rituals I had ever taken part in. It united the packed Usher Hall, which gave it a 10-minute standing ovation. The loveliness is everywhere, even in the ugliest and most hostile environment. The loveliness is everywhere, at the turning of a corner, in the eyes and on the lips of a stranger, in the emptiest areas, where there is no place for hope and only death invites the heart. The loveliness is there. It emerges, incomprehensible, inexplicable. It rises in its own reality. And what we must learn is how to receive it into ours. Pay attention, be astonished, tell about it. Thank you.
Yes. Are you up for questions? Yeah, sure. Right. Any questions? I've got a microphone to run to you. Any questions? Oh, right. Good.
Thank you very much for that comprehensive tour through the arts and nature and everything else going on in the world. Can you tell me, please, when you tell of these moments of astonishment that you see, do you find that the person listening to you also enters into that moment of wonder, or are they just bewildered? And if so, how you enable them to move on and see the world like you're seeing it?
I think it's probably the case that sometimes people are also astonished in the same way. Sometimes they're horrified at the thought I would find something astonishing and wonderful, and sometimes they're bewildered. I think, you know, for me, the interesting question is to ask people, what do you pay attention to? And what astonishes you? And what do you want to tell people about? You know, I always find that talking about my grandchildren evokes a very, you know, widespread response.
Thank you very much.
Oh, yes. Oh, what with the other side?
Thanks very much. A couple of years ago, we were on holiday in Hungary and Budapest. And whilst we were there, we were told by the guide that there's a church there that Putin worships at whenever he goes to Budapest, and that Putin claims to be Christian. Can you, given what you said before about the impact of the Second World War on the Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc, can you sort of unpack that a little bit as to what it is that somebody like Putin can claim to be Christian? I could ask you about the same about Trump, but I won't go down that road as well.
I have to say, in regards to Putin, that Rowan Williams, the former Archbishop of Canterbury, who is, you know, one of my favourite human beings and one of my favourite theologians, has attempted to engage with the Russian Patriarch on this issue. I think not with great success. I mean, again, you know, it's very hard to judge what's in somebody else's heart. You know, I think we all have to, I mean, I guess the question for me always comes back to thinking, you know, am I bringing the gospel into disrepute? And I find, you know, I think that's like a kind of marker, really.
Sorry. Thank you for this evening. My first appointment in the Methodist Church was in Clydebank and Alexandria. Okay. And I had an ongoing battle, I use the word advisedly, with the good people of Clydebank Methodist Church about symbols in the church and about ritual. Yep. And they were very happy to have a church filled with flowers, but if we had a candle, it wasn't allowed to be lit because that's what the Catholics do. And they were very wary of me using written liturgy, and yet they had all sorts of traditions that must not be trespassed on. I'm just wondering if you have a view about where and why, particularly in that part of the west of Scotland, there's this really strange divide where some things are tradition and other things are ritual, and some things are just nice visual things and other things are symbols. And there's a really hard line, and yet it's really difficult to work out exactly where the line is.
Yeah, I mean, it's incomprehensible, really, isn't it? I mean, my colleague John Bell used to say that if a church does something for 3 years in a row, it's a long-standing tradition. And, you know, you better have a good reason for trying to move it. I I don't know. I mean, the history of the west of Scotland is very fraught in relation to anti-Catholicism, and in the and the thing is, churches end up, 100 years later, apologising. The Church of Scotland, not long ago, apologised for its deeply racist comments at the General Assembly in the 1920s about Irish immigrants, and it's one of the places where I think, we always think about the church as judging the world, standing in judgment in the world, but we are really not good at recognising that the world stands in judgment on the church, and that some of the things that the church has done, really, decent human beings think this is ridiculous, or worse, this is terrible. But I mean, it's, some of the things are funny, and some of them are sad. And in the end, probably the Methodists in Clydebank may have changed their minds about that by now. It was 20 years ago. Yes. So I hope they've changed their mind about it. But I do think that, the ecumenical movement from the 60s and 70s onwards actually did, impact on a lot of people in Scotland. And I think just some of that is just, real strong identity stuff, of which it's, it's just one of the things that you have to keep saying again and again. Everybody's identity is superseded or overridden by the fact that, Jesus' welcome is for everyone, even if they like candles.
I should not have moved. Thank you. Thank you very much. I found your presentation really moving, but also thinking about the symbols and the rituals that Angela was talking about in Scotland. It just then triggered in my mind that actually that's still real in most parts of the world. And given the globalization that we are currently experiencing and how these images and rituals continue to be entrenched within our psyche and therefore our formation as Christians, I wonder whether you had some thoughts on any of that. I'm really struggling with how can we ensure that those things don't continue?
Yes.
To contribute to the damage and the trauma that we experience.
I have a friend who is a member of the Iona community, and she's a professor at Glasgow University, and she's the UNESCO professor of, this is a great title, she's the UNESCO professor of refugee integration through language and the arts. And I think that has been one thing that actually, the more people are invited to engage with different cultures and different ways of being, and find these, experience these as an opportunity, a God-given opportunity, to learn and to grow and to, consider it possible that you might be wrong about some things, and then I think that these are the kind of things that help us to both believe in ourselves, in our own faith and so on, but to be able to engage with other people in their rituals and symbols and so on. And the sad thing is that, a candle, it was, in some ways it's such an innocuous thing, but it became, for decades, maybe for longer, in the west of Scotland, a symbol of division. And yet, if you ask people, really, it is, there's something about paying attention, not just to things, but to the people. And I think just a lot of listening and actually pastoral sensitivity around these things. Is that because it's going to happen anyway? So, it's going to happen with our children and our grandchildren. And, I think about my grandchildren, all our grandchildren, facing a future that is very uncertain, and, what you can give to your children to strengthen them and to build resilience and courage, really, actually. But I think that, probably you all have as many ideas as me. Thank you. These are great questions.
I'm not sure this is as much a question or a comment. A few weeks ago, we went to visit Anglesey Brook, which is a museum about primitive Methodism.
Okay.
And I came out of there profoundly upset because I said, where's our passion gone? Where is our passion? Because it was all about people that stood out for the things that were wrong. And from that came trade unions and the temperance movement. I thought we've lost the passion. Yeah. Tonight, as you talked, the bits that resonated with me was when your passion came through. And I want that. What can we do to get the passion back into our churches, into our communities, into our own lives, that we are so moved that we need to tell the stories that make people say this cannot go on.
Well, I'm sure other people have got answers about that as well. I think that, there's always a tendency, a temptation to turn things off and to kind of step back from things because they're very painful. But if, again, it's like, what people say about grief or mourning or whatever, if you don't allow yourself to feel the sadness and the fear and the pain, then you kind of shut yourself off from the courage and the things that are also possible. And then I think, there's I don't know if any of you have ever heard a piece of music from something called The Lost Words, which is Robert Macfarlane, who's a poet and writer who wrote a book about the lost words that we were losing from our culture. And then he got a group of musicians together and they wrote songs about these words. And they were all words from nature, really. And this group of wonderful singers, actually, I could play one of them for you, but there's a great song by a woman called Careen Polwart, who's a Scottish traditional singer, wonderful singer, and it's about thrift, which is a tiny little flower, it's a little pink round flower, and it grows on cliffs and on rocks and beside rock pools and so on, and it's incredibly hardy, and it just hangs on there. And so she wrote this song about thrift and about how, hardship is a limit, not a failing. And I think that that's, so often we think about what happens to us has been to do with failing or failure, but sometimes it's just about hardship, and sometimes just hanging on in the rocks. I think it's a wonderful song. I'm sorry, that's just a bit of a witter. I think, so many of the things about, like, for example, the story of Hind Rajab, just because I heard about it, and, she was only just a little bit younger than my granddaughter. And I think, what would I be doing? If this was my grandchildren, what would this be doing if these are our children, or our nieces and nephews or whatever? I would damn well hope that the world would be doing a bit better than they are at the moment. And I certainly think that's true of our government. But then I could get all worked up again. Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay. Well, thank you. And I just wanted to say that, I really enjoyed my visit to the Methodist women all these years ago, because I thought, when I say women who garden, that's a very high compliment, because it means all sorts of things as well. And I think that, this is really important to me, all the people that, all the women who garden, or, garden at their laptops or whatever.
Thank you. Okay. Don't go too far. I had the privilege of preaching in Edinburgh City Methodist Church on Sunday, and they were doing John's Gospel. It was going through, the Bible month. So I was given the death, burial, and resurrection to preach on. What bit do I pick up? But when I thought about it, it was the despair of Mary standing there, watching her son die. And how many mothers are standing there watching their children die now. But we're Easter people, we know the story. What's the hope? And for me, the hope was Edinburgh on Saturday. Yep. For it was Edinburgh Pride. It was a bonus for me. But the URC church, 5 denominations came together and stood outside the church with placards saying, God loves you. And everyone who marched past clapped the church. And for me, it was a joy and the hope because of recognizing people for who we are. Hope for me also was at the United Nations with 13,000 women from Gaza, from Afghanistan, coming and talking about what it was like and their courage and their inspiration. But it was the word cooperation and to speak about it. So the hope is in people such as yourself, Kathy, for coming and sharing that passion, sharing those stories. And we are the hope of the church and for the world. And for Methodist women in Britain, that's our role, to share with passion, as Kathy has done, those stories that we come across. So our particular thanks to you, Kathy, for coming, sharing all those insights, sharing your passion and your creativity. So it's just a small token of our appreciation in here. Little goodies.
Oh, thank you very much.
I think they are yours, yes. Oh, yes, and some leaflets about who we are.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay. Sadly, I have another task to do. I came in as co-chair last year and started working with Maggie. We meet usually on a Monday morning over Zoom. We do talk about Edward things, don't we? But sometimes, but yes. And it's been a great joy and a delight to work with you, Maggie, over this year. But you have been part of MWIB and doing lots of work over the years. And we want to give you our gratitude for what you've brought as the person of who you are and all your giftings to us. We wish you all the well. She's not leaving us. She's going to be an ambassador. So we're not letting her go. But our thanks to you, and some little gifts here for you. Come up. Don't be shy. No, she wasn't, Kathy. She doesn't. Honestly, she wasn't going to sleep. Just a little gift. There is a gift card in there as well.
Oh, thank you.
But just to keep you domesticated, a little pinny and a tea towel. I know you. Anyway, our thanks to Maggie as she takes a retirement.
Well, thank you very much for this. It's always a bit of a long goodbye with situations like this, but I have truly had a wonderful experience with Methodist Women in Britain. I wouldn't have missed it for the world. I've learnt so much, and I can see where we're going. When I step down from this, as I say, I won't be going too far away. I can find another role that I can contribute, because I think the work is so important. But thank you all very much. Thank you.
And another introduction. We're delighted that she's been able to join us. Our new co-chair, Olive. So would you like to come and just say a word? Introduction? No, she doesn't. Okay. Right. I give you Olive, our new co-chair. Just say who you are.
Word. Well, she asked me to come in and say a few words. It's very difficult to say something at the beginning of something when you're waking up in the middle of the night and saying, what have I done? What have I got myself into? But looking around at the lovely ladies that have been working with Methodist Women in Britain, I have no doubt that I will enjoy the journey and I will continue to seek from everybody. So please continue to support us. Thank you very much.
Do enjoy conversations. I don't think they're kicking... Oh, are they kicking us out at 9? No, I hope not. You will see some material at the back. We've done a publicity drive. They're on your seats. So if you haven't squashed them, do take those. But if you're a delegate here, please come and see us at the stall and take a whole load of them back to your district, because that's what they're for. Because we've got 8 boxes of them and I can't take them on the train. So please do come and see us at our stall. Have a wonderful time. If you're a delegate, I'll see you, I hope. If not, safe travels home, and thank you for joining us tonight.